Well, greetings again. Now there's one last step that I usually do when I am doing a sequence of flight for FS Economy. And regardless of whether I'm using Aardvark or whether I'm using the FS Economy Flight Planner or my own, just picking flights, is especially if I have more than one flight that I'm flying at a time, is that I go through and, let me bring it up here. I use little nav map, and I'm using X-Plane. And so not all, if you've done FS Economy for very long, or if you're new to it and trying to figure out what's going on, sometimes you'll come across situations where an airport is not in X-Plane. So it's in FS Economy, but you can't find it in X-Plane. So I'm going to work through, show you how to fix that, and also how I go through and use that fix and a spreadsheet that comes with it to lay out my flight plan. And using a little nav map, each segment, I'll go ahead and create a route for that segment, and then I'm all ready to fly one route after the other. Just load up the next flight plan and off I go. The first thing that you need to solve this mystery, and it took me a while to figure it out. It wasn't, I struggled a lot trying to find the airports, and then finally if I came up with one that it didn't exist, well then I would just ignore it and go on to something else. And finally, I found on explain.org, doing a search on FS Economy prefab airports, in the scenery section, there's a prefab scenery for 25,000 airports, and it only adds the airports that don't currently exist in X-Plane. And so you download that, pretty simple instructions. I think there may be a pretty straightforward instructions. I think you need some additional things to go along with it, but it's relatively easy. If you've done any custom scenery, it's pretty straightforward. Part of that package, in the zip file, there is a spreadsheet, and it is list of prefab airports.xls. And we'll be using that in today's demonstration, where we were looking at, this is the route that we had defined in the previous video, going from SBBE all the way to San Jose, Costa Rica, MROC. And this is what we came up with. And so what I do, I go through and create all the flight plans, so it's really easy for me to go and fly each one of the segments. And to do that, I use little nav map. And I'm going to do the first couple of ones, and then I will skip ahead to ones that there are issues with. And fortunately, this set was pretty cool because it had two examples of issues that are fairly common when you're flying FS Economy in X-Plane. So I start off with SVBE, and if you haven't used little nav map, it's very, very cool. It's a free download from X-Plane, and anyways, you select the airport that you've queried, and then do a right click and select as departure. Piece of cake. All right, and from SBBE we go to SBJC. That is our destination. All right, and if I go here, that is the initial one. We started off at SBBE with a couple of assignments. We zipped down across the town to SBJC and pick up a few more assignments, and then we fly up north through Brazil. Okay, so I take a look, I right click on SBJC over here, and I create an approach. Now I'm running X-Plane, so I get the wind information that's current at this time, which is pretty helpful for determining which runway I'm going to use. Now, as I progress through and time goes on, I always double check the weather to make sure that the approach that I've defined is actually valid for that time. Winds can change, and sometimes it may take 3 days for me to go through a set of assignments that are as complicated as this, and assignments may fall off, and wind may change. So anyways, 2 knots we can pretty much take off anywhere. So what I will do is I will assume I'm taking off on 24, and I'm going to come around this way to 34. All right, so I created approach to the airport and insert into flight plan, and I will select 34 and select OK. So that puts us over here, but that's a pretty tight corner. So what I'm going to do is make a bit of a roundabout, and see this waypoint here. I'm going to hover over that, right click, and add waypoint to the flight plan. That's a little bit better. And if I click on this one here, right click and add waypoint. Now that's a lot more manageable flight plan that gives me the detail. Even if it's foggy, I can go through and follow this. It gives me room to turn around. And let's see, if I look down here and let's see, SBJC, I'll double click that, click on runway. It is at 51 feet, so 1051 is good there. We will just go ahead and 1051 and do a file and save as X-Plane 11 FMS 11. I've already defined this to go into the X-Plane output FMS plans, so click on that to save that, and we've got the first one. Now the next one's really easy. All I have to do is new flight plan. Our destination is still here, but that is now our departure, and we've got SNCC is the next flight. So SNCC, click, destination, double click on that. Winds are still 2 knots here. If we look at weather for SNCC, best runway is 25, so we go ahead and create an approach. 25, okay. This is pretty much straight in. If we want to, just to show another example, let's say we didn't want to make this tight of an angle. We could come back here, and let's say we wanted to add a position right here. And then if I pick a place right here, if I right click, I can add just a position to it. All right, so now I'm kind of breezing through with a little bit easier, and I got more time to line up for the airport and stuff like that. So it's pretty cool as far as, I really like the flight plan. If we click on, we're still on SNCC. The airport is at 0 feet, so we're coming in at 1,000 feet. Looks good. So we do flight plan, save flight plan for FMS 11, and save. Okay. Okay, so I worked my way along. Gave enough examples of the first couple of ones, piece of cake. We are now, and I put a dash mark for each one of the flight plans that I have put together. We've got SYCJ to SV0D. Okay, so I got SYCJ there, and we do SV0D, nothing shows up. Okay, this is where installing the prefab airports for FS Economy comes in super handy. So we go into the FSE data and click on Find, and we are looking at SV0D. All right, and we will look. Okay, SV0D, select SV76 for FSE SV0D. So we use SV76. SV76 and destination, and go through the same process that we were using before. Create an approach, and weather, if we go, well, let's see, go to weather, all runways good for takeoff. So we will do a 10, zoom in, that's straight. Oh, I'm sorry. Activated 20, got turned around upside down, almost as bad as being dyslexic. And you also have a choice. Now, I've been doing direct GPS. This is pretty low level stuff. You can check down here. On this flight, I need to have a minimum of 3,000 feet. So I would go 3,000 feet. I double check on that to make sure that I'm not going with the current flight plan. I'm not interfering with some, it looks like I've got some hills there at the very end here. So these hills here. So it's something that I got to, kind of like the NOTAMs. You take a look at your flight plan, and just because it's designed it doesn't mean that you don't have obstacles. Sometimes I've had to manually route around hills and mountains and obstacles in order to get a correct approach into an airport. All right, so that is example number 2, where a plane doesn't exist with that name in X-plane, but it still exists in X-plane. All right, let me show you one more example here. All right, the other thing I do is for the airports that have a different name, I put a note of that to remind me that when I'm looking in FS Economy versus the flight plan, there's a little bit of difference there. I've got probably 2 more examples, something like that. SVGI to PDZ is where we're at now. So we do PD. Fingers. PDZ does not exist there. Come over here to the spreadsheet, PDZ. And start over. Use SVPE. SVPE. Okay. Same example as last time. So we would make a note here that we are really looking at SVPE for X-plane. Okay. I've got another example to show you. If you're taking a look at this, then you say, well, gee, all I need is a spreadsheet to show what airports there are, how they map from the old Microsoft Flight Simulator or whatever that they use for their database, and X-plane. But the next one has a little different situation. Okay, so the next example is we're flying from TIST to MDHE. So we got TIST here, and we do a search on MDHE, and nothing shows up here in the little nav map, which uses Navigraph information. So Navigraph doesn't know about this either. If I do a search in the list of prefab airports, it gives me MDHE, but there's no use airport such and such for X-plane. It only gives you the landmark, the navigation area, latitude and longitude for the airplane. So what I do is I know that MDHE, in reviewing the flight plan, is close to MDSD. So if I do a MDSD and double click on that, that brings us here. And then I have to see if you can see it here. All right, sorry about that. You're using a lot of different tools here to put this together. As you work through it, you'll get more used to it. But here's our flight plan. It should look familiar from the last video that we did. We spent forever designing this, but it gave you lots of examples of doing this. And if we zoom into the Dominican Republic, where MDHE is, and we zoom in and zoom in and zoom in, we finally get a place where there is, it looks like an airport that's been converted to a park. So, but that's what it's probably a former airport that's been deprecated out of X-plane. If I hover over the Antiguo Aeropuerto de Herrera, then that gives me the latitude and longitude that I need to be working with. It is right down here on the bottom of Google Maps. So I hover over, actually I can hover over either one. This is the end of the airport, so that is good. So we've got 18 degrees, 28 minutes, 03.59 seconds north, and we've got 69 degrees, 58, 11.10 west. Okay, so that gives us the latitude and longitude that we want to plug in using Little Nav Map. And so there's probably an easier way to do this, but if we 1825, oh no, go ahead, 18, there we go, 1828, 11. All right. And then 1827, I know it's a bit tedious. 27, 28, 359. So 1828, 6, 2, 3, 69, 58, 10. That's pretty darn close. Okay, so we right click, add position. Oops, sorry, that's wrong. We want to add user point, and we will call it MDHE. We'll call it, on the drop down here, it is an airport, and click OK. All right, and we can get rid of the delete. Oh, waypoint here. Waypoints are temporary. Okay, so if we click on this, we are looking at 1828, 3, 65, that's pretty darn close. 69, 58, 9, so this will be good. And if we remember our Google Maps here, just double check it. This is the angle of the runway. So what we need to do is roughly about here create a approach in. So if we flip back over here and zoom out and come right about here, this is where we want to add a waypoint. So we'll add a waypoint and then add MDHD to flight plan. Now, this is not a true destination, so it's kind of a hassle. So what I end up doing, since we're going real close here, is put the next location as MDSD and add that as a destination. Okay, and then as a matter of fact, then I go into MSD, show arrival. We want to come in on 17. Let's do ILS 17, gives us plenty of room. All right. That's a real tight angle there, like I mentioned, so we will, oh, let's go from here. Let's add Puros. And that's pretty, we got kind of a tight angle here. We could actually bring this out. Add waypoint there. Okay, so we'll go in. Remember, this is like 1,000 feet for waypoint 2. It's 4.1 nautical miles. So we really usually between 3 and 4 miles for an approach. So if we're at 1,000 feet at waypoint 2, that should be pretty close to a standard approach into MDHD, and we should be lined up good enough that we can adjust our landing. Then from MDHE, we will handle our assignments, give them or take them or whatever we're doing, and then zip around from MDHE and come around to MDSD. Okay, so then what we do is we go over to our notepad and we say, this is a manual for MDHE, and then we're going to MDSD and delete this step here. So we're combining two different airports into the same line here with a manual approach and landing here to MDHE, and then on to MDSD for the next one. When you look at this, it's pretty complicated. It can be pretty complicated. But then, you know, one of the things, if you go into FS Economy, it says right here, as fun as it gets. And if you are a pilot, if you have been around pilots, I haven't done a whole lot around real pilots, but a little bit. I know that there's a lot of work that's done to prepare for a flight. You look at the weather, you look at the route that you want to take, VFR, IFR, you take a look at the flight level that you need, what airspaces there are. So, you know, there's a lot of complexity for doing a normal flight. So this is no more complex than doing something like that. And especially if you're looking at bush planes where you may land at an airport or a field or a lake that doesn't have an official airport, but you still may want to use Little Nav Map or a tool like that to get in there and navigate. You can use Little Nav Map to figure out, oh, well, I can't go directly into a location. I have to fly down a valley to get to the airport, not, you know, and to avoid the hills and to get low enough for the approach. So anyways, I hope you enjoyed this. The rest of the airports are pretty standard, but that gives you a couple of different examples of using X-Plane with FS Economy and the tools that I use, Little Nav Map, along with Aardvark Flight Planner, the FSE Flight Planner that I showed you, and the FS Economy itself. So I hope you enjoyed this video, and thanks for watching.